You are in the moment, wanting to connect and enjoy intimacy, but suddenly, your body betrays you. The event is over before it even began. You feel frustrated, embarrassed, and you think something is physically broken. But what if your body is actually functioning perfectly, and it is simply executing an ancient neurological survival reflex? Today, we expose the nervous system's secret to male stamina. This video is for educational purposes only. This is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Sudden changes in sexual function can be a sign of underlying neurological or cardiovascular conditions. Consult a urologist or healthcare provider. Now, let us remove the shame from the conversation. Premature ejaculation is not always evidence of a damaged body. In many men, especially when performance anxiety is present, it is a neurophysiological reflex driven by the brain's threat circuitry. That means the problem is often not broken anatomy. It is a nervous system that has become too efficient at detecting danger. When a man becomes self-conscious, monitors his own performance, or fears losing control, the brain can interpret that moment as a stress event. The result is a surge in sympathetic tone. That is the same survival physiology involved in fight or flight. Heart rate rises, muscle tension increases, breathing becomes shallow, and the body shifts away from calm regulation. Here is the critical paradigm shift. Climax and ejaculation are not random events. They are coordinated by the central nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. In simple terms, the brain is not just observing what is happening. It is actively deciding, through reflex pathways, whether the body remains in a regulated state or moves rapidly toward release. In a relaxed state, the parasympathetic system supports arousal, circulation, and tissue relaxation. In an overactivated state, the sympathetic system can accelerate the climax reflex. This is why the same man may feel calm in one setting and struggle in another. The difference is not morality, weakness, or failure. It is nervous system state. So the first step is not self-blame. The first step is biological understanding. When you stop labeling the issue as personal failure and start recognizing it as a stress-amplified reflex, you regain leverage. That is the beginning of control. Not force, not shame, but physiology. In the next section, I will show you exactly how the autonomic nervous system creates this response and why anxiety makes the reflex so fast. The human autonomic nervous system has two major branches, and they are constantly balancing each other: the sympathetic system and the parasympathetic system. This balance is not abstract theory. It is the biological operating system that determines heart rate, respiration, vascular tone, muscle tension, and the timing of reflexive sexual response. For men struggling with premature ejaculation, the key insight is this: climax is not merely a conscious decision. It is a reflex integrated by the brain and spinal cord, and it is strongly influenced by autonomic state. When the system is calm and regulated, arousal can build more gradually. When the system is hyperactivated, the reflex threshold drops. The parasympathetic system is often described as rest and digest, but in this context that phrase should be understood precisely. Parasympathetic dominance supports relaxation, vasodilation, and controlled physiological arousal. It allows the body to remain internally steady rather than prematurely shifting into a high-alert state. By contrast, the sympathetic system mediates the classic fight or flight response. It is adaptive in danger, but problematic when it is recruited during intimacy. Under sympathetic activation, respiratory rate becomes shallow, the heart rate rises, skeletal muscle tightens, and the pelvic floor may increase in tone. The body becomes efficient, fast, and reactive. That is the trap of performance anxiety. The brain does not always distinguish between a physical threat and a psychological threat. If a man begins monitoring himself, worrying about timing, or anticipating failure. The threat detection circuits may interpret the situation as urgent. The sympathetic system activates, and the body behaves as though it must complete the reproductive sequence quickly. From a biological perspective, this is not irrational. It is ancient survival programming. In a perceived high-stress state, the nervous system prioritizes speed and escape over fine control. That is why the reflex can feel sudden, involuntary, and resistant to conscious effort. The body is not malfunctioning. It is following a stress script. This is why willpower alone often fails. A man cannot simply think his way out of a fully activated sympathetic state. If the respiratory pattern is shallow, the heart rate is elevated, and the nervous system is already interpreting the moment as pressure, the reflex pathway remains primed. The solution must be physiological, not merely psychological. This distinction matters because it removes shame. Shame tells a man that his body is defective. Biology tells a different story. His nervous system may be overprotective, overresponsive, and overly efficient at triggering a reflex that should occur later. That means the target is regulation, not self-criticism. Once you understand that premature ejaculation is often a state problem rather than a structural problem, the entire treatment strategy changes. The next step is learning how to interrupt sympathetic overdrive and restore parasympathetic tone before the reflex accelerates. At this point, the objective is not willpower. The objective is autonomic regulation. You're trying to shift the body out of a threat state and back into a parasympathetic state, because the vagus nerve is a major neural conduit of parasympathetic signaling, linking the brain with the heart, lungs, and digestive system. That is why breathing is not a trivial relaxation trick. Slow diaphragmatic breathing can influence the autonomic nervous system, and the scientific literature consistently shows that slow, controlled breathing is associated with greater parasympathetic activity and a shift away from sympathetic dominance. Mechanistically, this matters because breathing and vagal activity are linked through respiratory sinus arrhythmia and related cardiorespiratory reflexes. In plain language, when the exhale is slowed and lengthened, the nervous system receives a stronger signal of safety, and the physiological intensity drops. So the goal is not to fight arousal. The goal is to interrupt the threat cascade before it becomes self-reinforcing. When the body senses urgency, it accelerates. When the body senses rhythm, control returns. A practical method is box breathing. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. Another option is a slower exhale-focused pattern such as 4-7-8 breathing. The exact pattern is less important than the physiology. Slow, deliberate breathing reduces respiratory drive, supports parasympathetic activation, and helps lower autonomic arousal. Here is the key instruction. The exhale should be the longest and most controlled phase. That is where the nervous system receives the strongest down-regulation signal. The breath should remain quiet, nasal if comfortable, and diaphragmatic rather than high in the chest. This is why I describe the vagus nerve as a biological override. You are not arguing with fear using language. You are changing the state of the autonomic nervous system through respiration. That state change is what softens sympathetic tone and helps restore control over timing. For men who experience premature ejaculation from performance anxiety, this is the clinical lesson. The body often needs a safety signal before it can tolerate intensity. Breathing supplies that signal. It is immediate, discrete, and repeatable, which makes it one of the most practical tools available in real time. In the next chapter, I will show you exactly how to use this protocol before and during intimacy, so the nervous system stays regulated long enough for the reflex to slow down. Now we move from biology to implementation. The goal during intimacy is not to force control through tension. The goal is to prevent a surge in sympathetic tone before the ejaculatory reflex crosses the point of no return. The ejaculation process is a spinal reflex influenced by pelvic floor contraction and sympathetic control, so the practical target is to keep the system regulated long enough for arousal to remain manageable. The first instruction is simple. Slow the pace before your nervous system accelerates it. Men with performance anxiety often enter a cycle of self-monitoring, shallow breathing, and rising muscle tension. That is exactly the physiological pattern that reinforces premature ejaculation. Behavioral therapies for premature ejaculation often focus on reducing performance pressure and training delay through structured regulation rather than force. Use diaphragmatic breathing as a preemptive intervention, not an emergency reaction. Begin before the intensity rises. Slow breathing patterns are associated with greater parasympathetic activity and lower sympathetic arousal, which makes them useful for state control in real time. As the breath slows, consciously release the pelvic floor. That matters because the expulsion phase of ejaculation is linked to pelvic floor musculature and spinal reflex activity. When anxiety is present, people often tighten without realizing it. So the cue is not to clench, brace, or hold the abdomen rigidly. The cue is to soften. A useful clinical sequence is this. Inhale quietly through the nose, exhale slowly, and let the exhale become the signal of safety. The literature on slow breathing supports a shift toward parasympathetic dominance, and that is the state in which control is easier to maintain. If you are with a partner, the communication should be minimal, calm, and pre-agreed. A brief pause, a change in pace, or a momentary reset can be enough to prevent the reflex from escalating. Behavioral therapy for premature ejaculation often uses structured pause and resume methods for exactly this reason. You are not trying to eliminate arousal. Arousal is necessary. You are trying to keep arousal below the threshold where the sympathetic reflex becomes automatic. That distinction is crucial. Regulation is the objective, not suppression. For many men, it helps to think in terms of rhythm rather than performance. Rhythm slows the mind, steadies the breath, and lowers the likelihood that the nervous system will interpret the moment as a threat. In clinical terms, you are reducing performance pressure and preserving autonomic balance. Behavioral treatment and psychosexual strategies are specifically used to reduce performance anxiety and improve confidence and control. The practical rule is this: breathe first, soften second, pace third. When the nervous system remains in a calmer state, the reflex is less likely to dominate the experience. This is why a breathing protocol can be so valuable when paired with behavioral control strategies. If this is done consistently, the session becomes less about panic and more about regulation. That is the real objective. Not to win a battle against your body, but to keep your body out of the threat state long enough for control to return. At this stage, we have addressed the nervous system. Now we must address the tissue environment. Erection quality, vascular responsiveness, and the ease of physiological relaxation are all influenced by smooth muscle tone, endothelial function, and autonomic balance. Chronic anxiety does not remain confined to the mind. It can manifest as persistent muscle tension, altered breathing mechanics, and increased sympathetic vasoconstriction. In plain clinical terms, the body becomes less permissive to relaxation. This is why the breathing protocol and tissue support strategy complement each other. Breathing helps regulate the autonomic nervous system. A calm autonomic state supports better vascular function, and better vascular function supports a more stable physiological response. One important molecule in this conversation is nitric oxide. Nitric oxide is a key signaling molecule involved in vascular relaxation and blood vessel dilation. When nitric oxide signaling is functioning appropriately, smooth muscle can relax more efficiently. which supports healthier circulation. That does not mean a supplement is magical, and it does not mean every product works the same way. It means that some men look for a clinical-style formula designed to support nitric oxide pathways as part of a broader lifestyle and breathing protocol. For that reason, some formulas are marketed as smooth muscle support protocols. A name like Red Boost may appear in that category, but the important question is not branding. The important question is whether the formula is positioned to support circulation, relaxation, and overall vascular wellness in a responsible way. Always consult your urologist or healthcare provider before using any supplement, especially if you have cardiovascular disease, blood pressure concerns, take prescription medications, or have a sudden change in sexual function. The reason I stress this is simple. Premature ejaculation can coexist with other conditions, and new or worsening symptoms deserve proper medical evaluation. A supplement should never replace a diagnostic assessment when the clinical picture is changing. So the framework is now complete. First, calm the nervous system with diaphragmatic breathing. Second, reduce pelvic floor and sympathetic tension. Third, support the vascular environment so smooth muscle can relax more effectively. That combination is far more rational than shame, panic, or guesswork. The final message is not that you are broken. The final message is that your body is responsive, adaptive, and trainable. When you understand the autonomic nervous system, you stop fighting yourself and start working with physiology. This video is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. If you are experiencing sudden, persistent, or worsening sexual function changes, seek evaluation from a qualified urologist or healthcare provider before starting any supplement or protocol.